What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Dylan, and today we're talking about the Resident Evil Village DLC expansion, Shadows of Rose. Now, with this DLC, it also came the third-person mode for the base game, as well as the Mercenaries mode. I'm not going to talk about either of those. This is just strictly focused on the Rose storyline. Full spoilers ahead, so if you do not want to reveal anything for yourself, go ahead and click away and come back another day. Otherwise, like and subscribe. The more people we have join the channel, obviously the more conversations we can have about video games down in the comments below. So I'll say right off the bat, this game had me at third person. As soon as you bring third person back into Resident Evil, I'm sold, I'm all in. If you've been watching my content for some time, even back to my Twitch days, then you know I greatly prefer third person over the first person perspective. I don't hate the first person Resident Evil games, but I definitely feel like third person brings more to the table as far as characterization and just the general feel and movement of the character. This does, however, kind of bring a question up in my mind, Capcom, what are we doing with Resident Evil going forward? We have the remakes. They're all in third person. They're fantastic. And the mainline series up to this point has been in first person since RE7. But now we're having DLC that's in third person, and the base game is now in third person. So I'm just very curious as to what the next mainline Resident Evil game is going to be. So all in all, this game did control very well, it did feel very good, and it did feel very much like Resident Evil. But there were some decisions made that I felt hampered the experience and restricted the player at the same time. First off, that's the environments. We're essentially going through the same environments as we did in the base game. There are a few minor changes here and there, but you're going to recognize immediately Dimitrescu Mansion. You're going to recognize the village, of course. We go into the caves where the Megamycete is held. And I know leading up to this release, they kind of talked about how we would be entering some kind of alternate dimension, some kind of dream dimension of some kind, which we do. And when I heard that, I said, dang, they can do whatever they want as far as environments are concerned, as far as enemies are concerned. They could get crazy. I mean, a Resident Evil game that takes place in some kind of reality-altering space, they could get really, really trippy, really psychedelic, and they just didn't. They just are like, no, we're just gonna bring you back to the mansion. Well, now we're just gonna put you back in the village again, and on top of that, more restricted versions of those previous environments. There are a lot of doors that are blocked off, a lot of hallways that are clogged up that weren't previously that way in the base game, and I feel like that really restricted a lot of the exploration that you tend to find with Resident Evil games. This was much more linear, very short experience, and that probably has to do with the fact that they also released Mercenaries and a third-person version of the base game. If this was strictly $20 and the only content you got was Shadows of Rose, they probably would have expanded much more greatly on it. But because of that, we're left with a slightly less interesting, less experimental experience. And I say, less experimental, but, maybe I'm contradicting myself here because I think this is an experiment on two fronts. One, I think Capcom wanted to introduce us to a new potential main character, that being Rose. I'll say her characterization was really good. I dug her character all the way through. No matter what crazy shit she ran into during this adventure, she was determined to reach her goal, to rid herself of her power. So I do really like the character of Rose, and if she's going to be the MC going forward for the next couple of mainline games, I am all in on that. I have no problem whatsoever, and I think that's kind of the first experiment that Capcom wanted to introduce with this DLC. Experiment number two is a little bit more interesting, a little bit more exciting, that being the introduction of essentially superpowers. Now, Rose's abilities in this expansion aren't anything super mind-blowing. She can freeze enemies, she can slow them down, and she can do kind of like a little force push type ability. Nothing super major, but I think it went over well. It was balanced well enough. And in future games, I mean, we could get to a point where she's picking up people and throwing them across the room. You see something like that in Callisto Protocol, where you could pick up your enemies and throw them into essentially these meat grinder machines to get some crazy kill animations. At one point in this expansion, she's summoning roots from the ground and entrapping her enemies in the roots. You know, you apply that to the base game of Resident Evil 9, whatever that looks like, and I think you could do some fun stuff with puzzle solving, and you could do some fun stuff obviously with when attacking your enemies in combat. And if they want to move forward with that, I think that could make Resident Evil 9 very interesting. So if I could get into a more detailed description of my experience with this DLC, you know, it's a 3 to 4 hour experience, definitely a short one, more linear, as I said earlier. I was not thrilled with the first hour to hour and a half. It was fine. It was serviceable. It was Resident Evil. It felt like Resident Evil. But, you know, the enemies were very samey. They all looked exactly the same, just these standard humanoid mold monster things. You got a shotgun, you got a pistol. You blow up their heads and you move on. The game gave me a surplus of ammunition, which is not a staple for Resident Evil. Typically with these survival horror type games, it's all about saving one bullet, choosing when to fight and when to run. But for whatever reason, the game was always sure to keep me locked and loaded with bullets and healing items. In Shadows of Rose, I don't know what it was. I don't know what the balancing issue is here, but at no point did I feel like I was on the verge of running out of ammunition. But I would say the best part of this expansion comes after you leave the Dimitrescu mansion and head for the dollhouse. In the base game, the dollhouse is, you know, infamous or famous for the big goopy baby monster, whatever you want to call that thing, and I would say it shines once again in the expansion. This time you're being chased by these mannequins. You're being stalked by these mannequins that come to life anytime you're not looking at them, and it is horrifying. So of course, essentially, you have a place in the house that you need to get to, but you always have to try and keep your eye on this mannequin as you go. Because of this, you're essentially forced to walk backwards through the house, which can be disorientating. And it also means you have no idea if there is another doll behind you. So that means you're always doing these 180-degree turns, checking around each corner, making sure there's not a mannequin ready to pounce on you. But you also have to try and keep your eyes on the other mannequins that you're already aware of so that they don't catch up to you. You know, it is a crazy balancing act. The sound effects and the stomping noises they make when they start running at you is absolutely horrifying. I would even consider one of the scares during this section to be one of, if not the best scare I've ever experienced, I guess, in Resident Evil. We're going to watch the clip right here. Let's take a look. Now, I love this scare for a couple of reasons. First and foremost, this is an organic jump scare. If you know me, you know that I don't like when games just put jump scare after jump scare. I think they're kind of cheap, almost like cheating. You know, like if you're going to call yourself a horror game, you need to set the atmosphere. You need to set up horrifying situations, not just throw something loud and shocking at the screen. The other reason I love this is actually because of what was happening in real life at the time. So I was playing this, and I had actually gotten my wife to join me and watch, because she likes scary movies. I figured, hey, you might like to watch me play a scary game. So we were doing so, and she was actually feeding our baby at the same time. And when when the mannequin jumps from around the corner, we both screamed, jumped off the couch just about, and doing this freaked our baby out. So then our baby starts crying. It turns into this whole situation. Eventually we get him calmed down, and we just kind of relish in the fact that, like, oh my God, this moment in this video game just caused such a ruckus. It was maybe not so funny in the moment, but in hindsight was hilarious. And so I really love this moment. It gave us a great family memory, and I'll never forget it. As far as the story for this expansion is concerned, highly predictable, very, very predictable. She starts off the expansion saying, I want to get rid of my powers. And as soon as she says that, you kind of just tell yourself, well, I'm sure by the end of this expansion, you'll be happy that you have your powers and you won't want to get rid of them. You know, she's going to learn to accept herself, learn to love herself for who she is, powers and all. You know, that was very easy to call. And then, you know, she gets into this alternate reality, and she is actually has a partner of some kind. This golden lettering starts writing itself on the walls and floors and ceilings, essentially directing her where to go, providing her items when she needs it. And this character at first goes by the name Michael, but it was very, very obvious that it was not Michael, it was Ethan. Now, even though this was easy to predict, and you know, I saw it coming a million miles away, it was still heartwarming. It was still a good touch. It's more important that Rose herself didn't know, because it becomes a surprise for her. It's not a surprise for the player. It's a surprise for the character of Rose, that her dad was there the whole time kind of helping her out. And they do get to meet at the end. It's very touching, very heartwarming. But damn it, Capcom, why can't you show Ethan's face? What are you afraid of? Why can't you show his face? Why can't you show us what this motherfucker looks like? In this ending cutscene here, this is a touching moment between Rose and her father, and they're still covering his damn face with his arm, or the camera is just below his nose. It just looks so weird. It's so weird. I don't understand what this complex is with Capcom and Ethan Winters. Just show his damn face. Come on. But otherwise, guys, I mean, that wraps up my impressions of this DLC. It's a fun, short little experience. If you want a little appetizer, a little snack of Resident Evil content, I think this is great. It's only $20 for Shadows of Rose, Mercenaries, and the third-person mode of the base game, which I've also been playing on the side, and it's great. I love it. I definitely think it's worth your time. I definitely think it's worth the money. So if you're a Resident Evil fan and you, for whatever reason, haven't checked it out, and also watched this entire video, I don't know what you're doing, I definitely think it's worth the price. It's definitely worth a play. So it gets 2 thumbs up from me. I definitely recommend it. Guys, let me know your experiences in the comments below. Have you played Shadows of Rose? Did you enjoy it? Answer this, you know, first person or third person? What are you feeling as far as Resident Evil is concerned? Where we're going to go in the future, first or third person? Let me know down below. Otherwise, that is going to wrap it up for today, guys. I appreciate the view. Like, subscribe, share it around, and we'll catch you on the next one. Peace.